Have you ever sat in the dead silence of your own room, not even blinking, not even breathing, just staring at the wall like it owes you answers, not answers to the future, but to the past, to the betrayal, to the abandonment, to the storm that hit your life and left you crawling through glass on your hands and knees while the people you bled for vanished into the night? Not a message, not a call, just absence, just ghosts. The ones who once said, "I've got you," now pretend they never even met you. And you're sitting there, fists clenched, jaw locked, chest pounding like war drums, trying to figure out how the hell loyalty turned into loneliness. You scream, but only inside. You cry, but only in your bloodstream. And still, something inside you starts to crack open, not from pain, but from power, not rage, not revenge. Something colder, something darker, something divine. That's not heartbreak you're feeling. That's the sound of your old self being incinerated. Life doesn't knock. It kicks the damn door down and throws chaos at your face without warning. It doesn't send emails before betrayal. It doesn't send notifications before collapse. It just hits. And it hits hard. One day you're surrounded by people. The next, you're alone, eating with your own shadow. And while you're down there, bleeding in silence, clenching your teeth to keep from falling apart, something sacred happens. You stop begging, you stop explaining, you stop waiting, and you start listening to that fire inside your chest that no one can see. The same fire Stoics walked through when empires crumbled and legacies turned to ash. Seneca didn't write from comfort. He wrote with scars. Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men, not poetic, not pretty, just truth. And here you are, not burned, not broken, but forged, like steel dragged through hellfire. This isn't a speech, this is a funeral for your old self, the version of you that tolerated too much, gave too much, stayed too long, and spoke too little. That version, dead. What's rising now doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't beg. What's rising now is a storm with skin, a soul with scars. You've clapped for people who mocked you behind closed doors. You've held others while no one ever held you. And somehow, through every lonely night and silent scream, you didn't just survive, you evolved. That pain rewired your DNA. It taught you stillness, precision, restraint. And the world should be terrified, because there's nothing more lethal than a man who feels nothing but clarity. Don't confuse this with motivation. Motivation is noise. This is silence. This is that split second before war where you don't blink, don't speak, just breathe, and the entire room shifts because your energy changed. This is the calm that rattles people, the chill that walks in before you do. They thought they broke you. No, they summoned you. They pulled the trigger, thinking you'd fall, only to realize they just woke up the version of you that doesn't even speak anymore. You're not trying to be strong, you just are. Strong like cracked stone, cold like sharpened steel, and there's no turning back now. This is unbroken Stoic philosophy. And in this video, we're not handing out sunshine and fake smiles. We're dragging 8 raw truths into the light. Not Pinterest quotes, not pretty affirmations. These are truths born in fire and raised in silence. These are the kind of truths that cut deep enough to remind you who the hell you are. You're not here to move on. You're here to rise up. And every principle we dive into will punch you in the gut, because you've lived it, you've cried it, you've bled for it. And now, you'll own it. So don't scroll, don't tap away, don't blink, because this isn't for the ones who gave up when it got dark. This is for the ones who walked alone when no one clapped, who built themselves in silence, piece by piece, while the world slept on them. This is for you. Like, share, subscribe, burn this into your soul. And when it hits you, really hits you, type this in the comments like a final war cry. I am unbroken. Not because you made it out clean, but because you made it out cold, sharp, unstoppable. Now, let's get into it. Number 1. Your silence is power, not weakness. They mistook your silence for surrender, thought your quiet was the final gasp of someone who lost the war. But they couldn't see it, could they? The beast wasn't dead. It was watching, waiting, breathing through clenched teeth. Because silence like yours isn't weakness. It's precision. It's the look in a lion's eyes before it lunges. You didn't fall back. You fell inward, into yourself, where the real war was, where demons scream and angels choke. And still, you stayed still. That silence, it wasn't empty. It was sacred. It was the sound of a soul sharpening its edges in the dark, far away from the noise of cowards who mistake volume for strength. You could have fired back. You could have scorched the earth with truths that would have burned their reputation to ash. You had the facts, you had the fire, but you chose something far more terrifying. You chose restraint. You let them dance in their delusions while you became the storm they'd never see coming. You didn't walk away because you were afraid. You walked away because they weren't worth the echo of your footsteps. And that's what they'll never forgive you for, not the silence, but the power inside it. The fact that you never needed to scream to break them. You just had to disappear. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That line isn't stoicism, it's savagery, because it takes a monster of discipline to sit in front of chaos and not blink, to stand in front of slander and not flinch, to let people twist your name, spit on your character, and still smile like you've already buried them in a grave called irrelevance. While they were throwing tantrums on the stage, you were digging tunnels underground, building an empire where the lights don't flash, but the walls are bulletproof. And one day, they'll wake up in a world you created, with rules you wrote, and wonder how the hell you did it without making a sound. You've evolved past their games, past their fake apologies, their backhanded compliments, their poisoned invitations to explain yourself again and again until you're nothing but a puppet dancing to their strings. Not anymore. You cut the wires. You burned the script. You left the theater and set the stage on fire. That's what they hate, that you no longer bleed when they reach for you, that their guilt doesn't stick, that their betrayal doesn't echo. You've built a silence so loud it shatters their illusions every time you walk into a room without saying a single word. That's not peace. That's power in its most terrifying form. You don't want revenge. You became revenge, not with fists, not with fury, but with focus, cold, relentless, unapologetic focus, the kind that turns silence into a throne, the kind that crushes pity, sympathy, and noise under its boot. You didn't just stop speaking, you started listening, and in that stillness, you heard the truth. You owe no one a single drop of your energy, not an answer, not a clarification, not a breath. The people who left, the ones who doubted, betrayed, mocked, and mislabeled you, they don't get front row seats to your resurrection. They can watch from the cheap seats. They can choke on the silence. You are no longer fighting battles where the prize is validation. You don't chase closure. You don't chase understanding. You are not a paragraph in someone else's fiction. You are the storm they never saw in the forecast. You are the silence that deafens, the calm that kills, the stillness that ends wars without lifting a sword. They thought you were gone, but you were just getting quiet. And now, you're becoming. Number 2. You weren't rejected. You were redirected. It wasn't a gentle goodbye. It was a slam so loud it echoed through your bones. It was a look that turned into absence, a message left unread, a plan that vanished like smoke, a dream that collapsed mid-sentence. And it didn't just hurt, it devoured you. You didn't just lose something, you lost a version of yourself in that silence. That no you heard. It echoed like the end of everything. But what if it wasn't the end? What if it was the detonation you needed to shatter the prison you didn't even know you were living in? They didn't walk away, they were dragged out by fate, ripped from your story because they didn't have the stamina to stand in the storm you were becoming. You weren't abandoned, you were being unshackled. And yeah, at the time it felt like death. Like you'd been stabbed in the soul with no warning, no closure, no clean cut, just chaos. But chaos is where realignment begins. The universe doesn't send a whisper when it needs you to wake up. It sends an earthquake. And you? You survived the tremors. You sat in the ruins with your bloodied heart and your burnt expectations, and you kept breathing. Because underneath that rejection was surgical precision. Divine redirection disguised as heartbreak. The job you didn't get? It would have caged your spirit. The relationship that slipped through your fingers. It was never love. It was possession dressed in passion. The friends who disappeared the moment you needed them? They weren't friends. They were spectators. They came for the light show, not the storm that built it. So don't mourn their exit. Celebrate the clearance. You were not being pushed away. You were being cleared for takeoff. Epictetus didn't speak in riddles. He gave us fire. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish, but rather wish that everything happens as it does. That's not philosophy. That's a weapon. That's the kind of truth that turns a breakdown into a breakout. You weren't rejected. You were rerouted like lightning through clouds, pulled off the wrong road, and thrown onto a path paved in fire and freedom. You didn't miss out on anything. You were spared. Let them go. Let them all fall away. You've got scars now, and those scars are navigation lines. You've been redirected to higher ground. A place where your name is not tolerated, but revered. You're not a mistake that didn't work out. You're a storm that couldn't fit in their sky. You're not waiting for another chance. You're building the kind of existence that doesn't need permission. They said no. Life said yes. You weren't rejected. You were reborn. Number 3. People betray you to teach you loyalty to yourself. You gave everything, your heart, your time, your soul, like a damn fool on fire, hoping they'd catch the flames and burn with you. You loved so hard it broke laws of gravity, threw logic out the window, and drowned your common sense in a sea of reckless devotion. You forgave before the wound even scabbed, explained yourself like a broken record in a room full of deaf ears, made excuses for monsters wearing your face back to you. And when they stabbed you, it wasn't just a wound. It was an annihilation of everything you thought was sacred, like a grenade ripped through your chest, scattering pieces of trust into the void. You sat with that pain, raw and ragged, trembling with the unspoken question clawing at your guts. Why did the ones I loved become the ones who destroyed me? Here's the savage truth no one dares say. They didn't betray you to break you. They betrayed you to force you to swear a new loyalty, one so fierce it scorches the earth beneath your feet. The loyalty to yourself. Betrayal isn't new to the Stoics. Seneca watched empires crumble, watched faces turn from allies to assassins. His words slice through the noise. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. You craved loyalty, you craved love, you craved belonging. But now, standing amidst the ruins of your broken trust, You see the raw, bleeding core of truth. Loyalty from others was never your lifeline. The betrayal wasn't your end. It was your rebirth. That searing pain was the cruel midwife to your self-respect, dragging you screaming into the light of your own goddamn power. Your peace isn't negotiable anymore. Your silence isn't weakness. It's a war drum echoing through the shadows, a roaring declaration that you won't be used, broken, or bowed again. Your energy is no longer an open book. It's a fortress armed with molten steel and burning truth. Every time you slam the door on old patterns, every time you say no to the vultures circling your soul, you honor the part of you that wept alone in darkness, begging for recognition, screaming for worth. You owe no allegiance to the leeches who drained your kindness dry. Your loyalty belongs to the phoenix rising from the ashes, the version of you set on fire with iron will and unbreakable spine. They walked away. They shattered you. They tried to bury your name in dirt and lies. And yet, here you stand. Scarred, yes, but unshattered. Not because they built you, but because you refused to let them sculpt your identity. Loyalty to others nearly destroyed you. Loyalty to yourself forged you anew, a weapon sharpened in betrayal's cruel forge. So when those ghosts creep back, don't bend, don't break. You didn't just move on. You ascended, wild, relentless, alone. And that is power, carved in fire and blood. Number 4, you control nothing but your response. You didn't just face lies, you were swallowed by a tidal wave of venomous whispers, daggers coated in poison, aimed straight at your heart. The loss wasn't just a wound, it was a brutal amputation, ripping away pieces of your soul while you screamed into a void that answered with cruel silence. The world around you spun like a madman's carousel, mocking your desperate breaths, your bleeding hopes. That storm, wild, savage, merciless, hit with the force of 1,000 suns, exploding inside your chest, ripping apart everything you thought you knew about life, trust, and yourself. You were drowning in chaos, trapped in a cage of noise where no one heard the scream of your broken spirit. But then, in the eye of that hellish tempest, something snapped. You stopped fighting like a cornered animal clawing at shadows. Instead, you froze, became still. A calm God staring down the chaos and saying, "I don't own the wind, I own the sail." This isn't some soft whisper from history, it's a thunderclap burned into time by Marcus Aurelius himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Feel the weight of that sentence slam into your bones. You are a fortress, an untouchable force, even when the world collapses in on itself. You can't stop the knives thrown in your back, the bridges burned without warning, the friends who vanish like ghosts at the first sign of rain. You can't make them love you, honor you, or even see you. But here's the volcanic truth. They don't decide who you become after the fire. You do. That moment, that choice, is the apocalypse where your old self dies and a titan rises. You shattered the chains of reaction, the cheap thrills of anger, bitterness, and despair that once enslaved you. You responded. Not a flinch, not a snap, but a calculated, devastating calm that cuts through the madness like a blade of frozen steel. The question isn't why me, that's the scream of the broken. The question is, what savage power can I unleash now? You stopped wrestling with storms that weren't yours to tame. You became the storm's master. Peace didn't roar in like a conquering hero. It sneaked in like a shadow, creeping, unstoppable, reshaping your soul in silence. You smile when silence screams bloody war. You walk through chaos like a ghost with fire burning beneath your skin, untouchable and raw. This isn't discipline, it's a goddamn rebellion forged in pain, a wildfire of strength no Instagram quote can fake. It's the battle cry of the broken made whole, the warrior who stands tall with bloodied hands, eyes blazing with fury, heart screaming defiance. The world outside, it's still a savage beast, roaring and tearing apart dreams like they're nothing. But you became the beast's master. You stopped being a puppet flung around by fate's cruel hands. You chose to respond, to rise, to rip power back from the jaws of despair with teeth clenched and fire in your veins. You didn't just survive. You detonated your chains, crushed your demons, and walked forward as a god forged in chaos, unstoppable, unbreakable, untamed. Number 5. Your scars are your credentials. They want you to shrink into the shadows, to hush the roar of your past like it's some ugly secret to be ashamed of. But screw that. Your scars don't whisper, they scream. They shout the truth louder than any polished lie ever could. You lived through hellfire and came back wielding flames. Those cracks in your armor aren't flaws. They're the molten veins of a warrior reborn in agony. Every ragged edge, every jagged line on your skin and soul tells the story of a savage battle no one else saw, no one else dared to fight. Those scars, they're not just marks, they're the battle hymns of your survival, the violent tattoo of a spirit that refuses to be erased. Stoicism doesn't demand perfection, it demands relentless endurance. Epictetus didn't whisper platitudes. He bellowed, "Difficulties show men what they are. Let that shatter your bones." Your scars are the war paint of a gladiator who walked through the blood-soaked arena of life and came out roaring. You didn't fall and stay down. You exploded back up, raw and ruthless, dragging your shattered pieces through darkness thicker than venom. That's not just surviving. That's conquering the abyss itself. It's dignity seared on the anvil of pain, a savage symphony of unbreakable will. You were thrown away like garbage, left to rot in silence while the world danced on like you never existed. But you didn't vanish. You sharpened yourself into a blade of glass and steel. You learned to love with fire and protect with ice. You built walls, yes, but never cold ones. Walls forged from the lessons of betrayal, abandonment, and brutal loneliness. People see the polished warrior today and assume it was a smooth path. They don't know the nights you screamed into the void, the mornings when dragging your broken body out of bed felt like climbing Everest with hands torn raw. They don't see the raw, bleeding grit behind your calm. You owe nobody your story. But if you choose to unleash it, roar it like a beast in a cage, not because you were flawless, but because you were relentless. You walked barefoot through hell, carried your ashes like a crown, and rose like a phoenix drenched in blood and fire. That's not weakness. That's goddamn rebirth. Every scar, every wound, every jagged line etched into your flesh and soul is your wild signature on this brutal world, a proof that when darkness tried to swallow you whole, you spat fire and said, "Not today." Your scars aren't shame. They're your holiest scripture, sacred remnants of a soul forged in chaos and defiance. They blaze like wildfire, a lighthouse for warriors who know pain, who know power, who refuse to bow. Your scars don't hide you, they make you unstoppable. Number 6. You learn more from pain than from peace. Peace is a velvet cage, a soft, silent lie dressed as a sanctuary. It lulls you into a numb stupor where nothing bleeds, nothing burns, and nothing ever truly changes. But pain Pain is a beast clawing at your throat in the dead of night. Pain is the cruel slap of reality that flips your world upside down and spits in the face of your comfort. It storms into your life like a riotous thunder, shattering every illusion you ever clung to. Pain doesn't tiptoe or whisper. It crashes through your fragile defenses, rips open your wounds, and demands you stare straight into the abyss of your own shattered soul. When pain arrives, it drags you screaming through fire and ash, forcing you to choose between drowning in the wreckage or rising from the rubble with blood-stained hands and a heart on fire. Pain is not your enemy. It's the savage, merciless teacher who burns away the false, strips down the lies, and burns the map you once followed blindly. It taught you the brutal truth behind forever, that it's often just a ticking bomb waiting to explode the moment convenience slips in. Pain exposed the snakes hidden beneath the smiles, the ones who hugged you tight just to squeeze the life out of your hope. It burned the illusion that words mean anything when actions are daggers in disguise, and pain drilled a savage gospel into your bones, the only soul worthy of your unyielding loyalty. The only fortress that will never crumble is your own. Seneca bled wisdom in his words. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. You've been tested in hellfire. You've watched people vanish like smoke in a storm, leaving you alone with your bleeding heart and shattered dreams. Those moments of apocalypse, when your world cracked and the ground beneath you disappeared, weren't curses. They were the crucible forging you into a goddamn titan. You didn't need smooth roads paved with gold. You needed jagged scars and bleeding knees, because only through relentless pain could you carve yourself into something unbreakable, something untouchable. And you did it, quiet as a ghost, fierce as a wildfire. You held your bleeding heart in your hands, embraced the chaos, swallowed the bitter bile of betrayal and heartbreak. You forgave without forgetting, not to forget them, but to free yourself from their poison. You didn't scream for revenge. You carved your vengeance in silence, like a ghost rewriting your destiny with fire and ice. You rose from the ashes without applause, without spotlight, just raw, savage power pulsing through every scar and every shattered dream. That pain, it was no curse. It was your forge, your brutal, relentless, holy war. The wild storm that stripped away everything fake, leaving only the raw, unfiltered essence of who you are. Your scars aren't wounds, they're crowns. Your suffering wasn't weakness. It was the divine fire that made you unstoppable. Number 7. Silence is a weapon. Use it wisely. You used to spill your guts like a maniac, desperate, frantic, words flying out like bullets from a gun, hoping to land somewhere, anywhere, on someone who would care. You begged for scraps of understanding from hollow-eyed ghosts who never even glanced your way. Your explanations were chains you forged yourself, shackling your soul to a cage of exhaustion and disappointment. You screamed at walls that didn't echo back, poured your truth into black holes that swallowed it whole without a trace. Every word was a surrender disguised as hope. Every plea a crack in your armor that widened the wounds instead of healing them. And then, boom, a switch flipped. You stopped. You realized silence isn't the absence of power. It's a nuclear bomb waiting to detonate inside the quiet. A weapon so lethal, only those who have bled and broken can dare to hold it without trembling. The Stoics weren't soft. Marcus Aurelius didn't whisper sweet nothings about peace. He roared truths that split the sky. The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Your desperate need to explain. It was your own leash, your soul's strangulation, a puppet dance to the tune of others' approval. But when you wrapped yourself in silence, thick, impenetrable silence, you became a ghost haunting their empty minds. Your absence wasn't a void. It was a violent earthquake tearing through their illusions, a black hole swallowing their assumptions whole. Suddenly, your silence screamed louder than all the noise you ever made. It was a thunderclap that shattered the fragile facades of those who thought you were theirs to command. No more arguments, no more chasing shadows in the dark, no more bleeding words for ears that refused to listen. You vanished like a wildfire in the dead of night, unstoppable and unseen until it's too late. And that silence, it's a beast. A savage roar wrapped in quiet, echoing in the depths of their regrets. It shouts, "I am not your shadow, not your echo. I am a force you can't tame." Your silence is no vacuum. It's a fortress of raw, untouchable power, guarding your energy, your fire, your sacred damned soul. That silence grew claws. It birthed a mystery so deep and dark it could swallow galaxies. It transformed your healing into a secret war, your growth into a silent revolution that crushed weak foundations beneath your feet. Now, when you appear, it's not for validation. It's a declaration, a seismic event in the otherwise dull lives of those who took you for granted. Your presence is a choice carved from chaos, a thunderbolt hurled from the skies saying, "Here I stand, unbroken, unbound, untouchable." Let them spin wild stories in their hollow minds. Let them burn with the fire of what they lost, while you sit, quiet, savage, immortal, unbothered by their noise, unshaken by their betrayals, a silent storm brewing just beneath the surface, waiting to unleash havoc on a world that never deserved your light. Number 8. You don't need to be understood to be unbreakable. You ripped through the shadows, desperate for one soul who could crack your armor and see the inferno raging behind your eyes. But the world is a madhouse of blind puppets who mistake your fierce kindness for weakness, your burning distance for arrogance, and your ironclad strength for cold emptiness. Every step you took toward connection only dug a deeper grave of isolation, a swirling vortex of voices that drowned your truth in misunderstanding and deaf ears. You screamed into the void, and the void smirked back, indifferent, deaf, relentless. Stoicism spits in the face of that desperation. Epictetus didn't promise comfort. He dared you to be called foolish, stupid, broken, and still rise. He threw down a gauntlet. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's a battle cry for warriors who've been crucified by society's shallow gaze. You don't need hollow claps or empty validation. You crave raw, brutal truth. You crave the kind of peace that slices through noise like a razor, the kind of growth that breaks bones and builds iron skeletons. And that kind of transformation, it doesn't come wrapped in applause. It comes dressed in loneliness, betrayal, and the cold, merciless stares of those too weak to understand. You were never a puzzle piece for their fragile jigsaw. You are a goddamn wildfire forged in the hellfire of heartbreak, betrayal, and silent screams. You swallowed poison that turned your blood to steel, buried your broken pieces in the deepest trenches of your soul, so others could walk safely over your ashes. But that story, that survival, it's not for their shallow eyes. You're done shrinking, folding, muting your roar to fit their plastic boxes. You're done explaining why your silence isn't weakness, why your distance isn't cruelty, why your boundaries are sacred. Because those who mock your solitude, who sneer at your strength, are nothing but frightened shadows fumbling in their own darkness, too scared to see the burning core that refuses to die inside you. They don't get why you'd rather walk alone through the wasteland than drown in a sea of fake smiles, hollow words, and empty promises. Let them howl. Let their poison drip like acid on empty ground. You owe no one your truth, no one your fractures, no one your fire. You walk alone, unbroken, untamed, whole beyond measure. So whole that the presence of others is no longer a desperate crutch but a rare gift, a treasure you give only when you damn well choose to. You're not here for their understanding. You're here to shatter their expectations. You're here to be unbreakable. You weren't unraveling. You weren't crumbling under the weight of life's brutal punches. No. What you thought was falling apart was actually the relentless, violent process of falling into your true place. Every betrayal that sliced your heart open, every loss that dragged you into the cold abyss, every silent breakdown behind closed doors, none of it was wasted. It was the hammer, the fire, the blacksmith's forge shaping a version of you so ferocious, so untamed, so raw with power that even your own reflection struggles to recognize the warrior staring back. You're not the same person who trembled in the shadows. You're a storm, a force of nature. You're not broken. You're unshakable. You are unbreakable. You are unbroken. So now, take that breath, the kind that fills your lungs with the ashes of your past and fuels the fire of your future. Walk out of the ruins, rise through the chaos, and carry that silence around you like the sharpest armor forged from every wound, every scar, every moment they tried to bury you alive. That silence, it's your war cry without sound, your fortress without walls, your declaration that you will never bow again. If this fire ignited something in you, something fierce, something unstoppable, then make it roar louder. Like this message, comment that final affirmation, share it with the broken and the fighters, and subscribe not just for words, but for a revolution in every soul, desperate to reclaim their power and burn their limits to ash. Drop this in the comments right now and own it. I am unbroken. Say it loud, say it proud, because the world doesn't get to decide your fate anymore. You do.